There was once a young man who stood at a crossroads, unsure where to go. His friends had all moved forward, new jobs, new homes, new lives. But he felt stuck. He looked left, then right. Every path seemed blurry. Every choice felt heavy. And the more he stood still, the louder his doubt became. Why am I behind? He wondered. Why don't I know my purpose? One day, an old monk approached, carrying nothing but a walking stick. He looked at the young man and smiled. "You are not lost," the monk said gently. "You are just waiting to hear your own footsteps." The young man frowned. "But I don't know where to go." The monk sat beside him on a stone. "In the Dhammapada," the monk said softly, "the Buddha teaches there is no path to peace. Peace is the path." The young man tilted his head. "What does that mean?" The monk smiled. "It means you don't wait for clarity before you move. You take one small mindful step, and the next step reveals itself." The young man looked at the road again. For the first time, he wondered if standing still was not saving him, but keeping him trapped. The monk picked up a small pebble and rolled it between his fingers. "When you feel lost," he said, "the mind races, the heart tightens, and you start searching for big answers." He placed the pebble in the young man's hand. But the Buddha reminds us, small things matter. A tiny seed can grow into a vast tree. The young man closed his fingers around the stone. "Are you saying I should start small?" The monk nodded. "One small act of presence. One small step without needing the whole map. That's how we find the path, not all at once, but moment by moment." They walked together quietly. The young man felt his breath, the sound of his feet on the earth. After a while he asked, "But what if I take the wrong path? What if I waste time?" The monk stopped and pointed to a tree. "The Buddha teaches, your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it." He smiled. "But you don't discover by standing still in fear. You discover by stepping forward and noticing what feels true." The young man looked at the tree. It had bent, twisted, broken branches, but it had still reached for the sky. That evening they sat by a small fire. The sky turned soft with stars. The young man whispered, "I thought by now I'd have it figured out. My career, my purpose, my life." The monk gently stirred the fire and said, "The Buddha reminds us, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." He looked at the young man. "You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply learning how to walk your own road." The young man felt tears rise, not from sadness, but from release. The next morning they rose with the sun. The young man looked down each path again, but this time he noticed the small flowers at his feet, the warmth of the light, the quiet of his own breath. He turned to the monk. "I'm still not sure where I'm going," he admitted. The monk smiled. "That's all right. The Buddha says, as you walk and eat and travel, be where you are. Otherwise, you will miss most of your life." The young man closed his eyes for a moment. He wasn't sure of the destination, but for the first time he was sure he was here. If this story touches something in you, subscribe and tap the bell. Your path unfolds one mindful step at a time. As they continued walking, the young man noticed his mind racing again. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I'm not enough? The monk placed a hand on his shoulder. The Buddha teaches, you, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." The young man swallowed hard. He had never thought of himself that way, not as someone worthy, but always as someone trying to become worthy. And slowly, with each breath, he began to loosen the grip of doubt. They paused by a stream. The young man watched the water curl around the rocks, never forcing, never rushing. The monk said softly, "The Buddha reminds us, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." The young man sat, feeling the earth beneath him. His breath slowed. For the first time, he realized he didn't need to fix the whole future right now. He just needed to sit, breathe, and take in this exact moment. And in that stillness, he felt a kind of peace he hadn't known in years. As the sun lowered, they continued walking. The young man said quietly, "I used to think being lost meant something was wrong with me." The monk chuckled softly. "Being lost is just part of the path. The Buddha says, if you find no one to support you on the spiritual path, walk alone." The young man looked ahead. For so long he had feared walking alone, feared the silence, the doubt, the unknown. But now he saw it differently. Alone didn't mean empty. It meant free. That night they made camp under the stars. The young man lay awake, staring at the sky. He whispered, "What if I never figure it all out?" The monk, half asleep, smiled softly. "The Buddha teaches, the trouble is, you think you have time." The young man closed his eyes, letting those words settle. Maybe it wasn't about figuring everything out. Maybe it was about living fully, even in the not knowing. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid of being lost. He was curious about where he was. As dawn broke, the monk packed his things. The young man asked, "Will I see you again?" The monk placed a hand on his chest. "You will. Every time you breathe, every time you listen, every time you remember that you are already on your path, even when you feel lost." The young man felt a warmth rise in his chest. He realized that the monk had never given him directions, answers, or promises. He had only given him presence, and that, somehow, was enough. As the monk disappeared down his own road, the young man stood alone. But this time the silence didn't scare him. It held him. It reminded him he was already walking, already learning, already becoming. He smiled softly to himself. He didn't know exactly where the road would lead, but now he understood something the Buddha had taught all along. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And so, with one slow, steady breath, he took his next step. Not to escape the feeling of being lost, but to walk with it, gently, mindfully, all the way home.